All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into our next video, which is called Teaching Writing Strategies. I'm assuming before you're watching that you've done two things. One of which is that you've downloaded the Somebody Wanted But So graphic organizer. And the second thing is that you have also watched the Pigeon Impossible video. So if you haven't done those two things, stop the video, go and do those two things, and then we'll get started. Okay, so what we're going to do is talk about why it's so important to teach writing strategies to our students. This is actually the biggest research-based practice we can do to help our students. They come in and say, oh, I can't write, I can't do this, and they have all that negative self-talk going through their minds. What teaching them strategies does is replace the negative self-talk with a positive strategy that they can go to. And the strategies you teach them could be anything that a good writer does. So what we're going to do in this case is we are going to show them a pre-writing strategy, because good writing involves, we do some brainstorming, then we think about outlining, we've got a plan, then we write drafts, and then we edit to come up with a final draft. So teaching writing as a process is another great strategy we can use. So we're just going to teach students about how we can do a pre-writing strategy. And so as always, you would teach this using our direct instruction model of I do, we do, and you do. And I'll show you what I would do in the think aloud or the I do part of this if I was teaching my students this particular pre-writing strategy. So let's get started and take a look. And again, what I would have done before going through this think aloud is I would have divided my classroom in half. I would have had half the students focus on the pigeon as the main character in the Somebody Wanted But So graphic organizer. I would have had half the class focus on Walter Beckett, the CIA agent. And so I'd have them to be thinking about, as they're watching the video, what did this person want, either the pigeon or Walter Beckett, but what was the problem, and then finally, how was the problem solved? So I'm going to pick up my think aloud in the portion of after they've already watched the video and I've shown them there. I also would have, in the very first part of my think aloud, I would have done the buy-in, what's in it for them, and I would have talked about how important planning is to writing, and also how helpful a graphic organizer can be. We're also going to take a peek at a writing frame that we can use that goes along with the Somebody Wanted But So. And just an aside, I love the Somebody Wanted But So graphic organizer. If you're looking at literature, this can describe probably 99% of the stories out there. So a very, very valuable graphic organizer. So I'm going to go ahead into the Think Aloud. Okay, class, so we've had a chance now to see the Pigeon Impossible video. So I'm going to model for you how I might fill out my graphic organizer if I was looking at this from the perspective of the pigeon, one of the main characters there in our story. So if I'm filling out this part, I'm going to think about who was this story about. Well, since I'm focusing on the pigeon, the who in this is going to be the pigeon was the who in this story. So I've answered that first question. Pigeon is who. What did they want to do? Well, we saw the pigeon was apparently hungry. So the pigeon wanted to eat that bagel. So what did they want to do? They wanted to bagel, or I'm going to actually say the pigeon wanted to eat a bagel. And the pigeon was given a little snippet of the bagel you saw at the beginning, but really what the pigeon wanted to do was they wanted to eat a whole bagel. So they must have been really hungry. So what did they want to do? They wanted to eat a whole bagel. But what was the problem with that? Well, essentially the problem with that was they got trapped in a suitcase, and the bagel wasn't always where they wanted to be to eat it, and they couldn't get the whole thing at first. So there was really a lot of problems as we went on through. At one point in time, the pigeon was trapped in a suitcase. At one time, he couldn't get to the bagel in order to eat it. So it was really trying to go through a lot of things in order to get the bagel. So the man wouldn't give him the bagel, or the other character, we'll say here, Walter Beckett, would not give the pigeon the bagel. So all these problems the pigeon had to work through. And how creatively did the pigeon do that, where it learned how to move the suitcase around, and it moved how to fire the lasers at people, and it learned how to fly with the suitcase. So it did all those kinds of things. So lots of problems there. How was the problem resolved? Well, this is the interesting part of the story. And really what we could say the problem was resolved where the pigeon did get the whole bagel. You saw there at the end, the last few seconds of the video, the pigeon was actually eating the bagel. But what happened to the pigeon? The pigeon did get to eat the whole bagel, or actually, we really should probably say that the pigeon started to eat the whole bagel. But then if you saw at the very, very end, what happened? Well, we saw, boom, that nuclear missile hit it in the head and killed it. So we can say the pigeon started to eat the whole bagel. It realized its goal, but it was crushed by the nuclear missile there at the end. So, so I pretty much have my story here. What did the pigeon? Who was it? The pigeon? What did they want to do? They wanted to eat the whole bagel, but a lot of things happened. They got trapped in the suitcase, and essentially the other character, Walter Beckett, wouldn't give them the whole bagel. And so the pigeon kind of took the suitcase as a hostage, so to speak, and then finally reached its goal, got the whole bagel, but was killed in the end. Interesting tale about greed here. I think if the pigeon had just gotten that little snippet of the bagel, it would have been fine, but instead it wanted the whole thing and got killed in the process. So now that I've got this information in my graphic organizer, I can use this in a writing frame. And the frame basically just kind of shows me how to start, and I can just really fill in the blanks. So this frame says the story takes place, blanks a character in the story, who, a problem occurs when, after that, the problem solved when, and the story ends with. So I could use this frame and just fill in the blanks in order to do this. So I'm stopping the demonstration here, but you can see this is really a great way to help the less confident student get started writing. The graphic organizer does a great job on the brainstorming side. If we were going to write here an explanatory short paragraph or two on the story, this graphic organizer would help us to do it. And I love writing frames. Frames are kind of like training wheels. I remember when my kids were little, they used training wheels to help them to learn how to ride a bicycle. And so now with these writing frames here, it's like training wheels, and they can just kind of go through and fill in the blank. This is an activity we can use through scaffolding. So in other words, we can give students more help at the beginning with more of the parts pre-printed out, and as they get more experience, they're not going to need those, and they eventually won't need those at all. So just a great way to go. So teaching writing strategies replaces students' doubt and confusion with a positive strategy. So please use those with your students inside your classrooms as you're writing.